Hello, everyone. I would like to start with a strange question. I'd like you to think and tell me what leaks faster? Is it a cracked bucket or a perfect bucket with tiny, invisible holes in it? Most people say it's the cracked bucket, right? We all think, okay, crack is the biggest thing. So most people will say cracked bucket. But you see, in reality, the bucket with those invisible holes empties first. Why? Because no one notices until it is too late. So now let me ask you this. What do you think drains more performance in your team? One big failure or dozens of tiny invisible moments that is happening within the team? So we all think, most leaders think it is the big failure, and most leaders will only watch out for the big failure, right? But the truth is, it's those tiny, invisible moments, like the hesitation that comes after unclear instructions from the leaders, the silence after that tensed email from the leader, the disengagement after a rushed meeting. Very fast, the meeting happens and gets over. The disengagement right after that meeting. These are tiny moments and very invisible moments. And these are the real leaks in the team, the performance leaks which is happening. The thing is that the leaders first have to start looking at those small, tiny, invisible moments. And once you see them, you can start working on them. You can plug the invisible holes so that your bucket will never become empty after that. Now, think about your team. Are you losing performance through those invisible leaks? Your invisible leaks, right? You don't see them. They're all lying in small, small ways in which you're interacting with your people, with your team, in a hurried email, a missed recognition for your team, a careless tone or attitude of the leader in the meeting. And may not even notice or realize, but these are where those invisible leaks are happening. The truth is, teams do not collapse from big failure or one big explosion. They slowly drain through small leaks of clarity, trust, and energy. And the surprising part, those leaks don't come from your strategy, your vision, your mission statement, or even your skill as a leader. They come from the emotional aftertaste of your everyday communication. It's happening every moment, every day between you and your team. Now, I want to ask you this. Have you ever walked into a meeting and felt strangely heavy? Not because what was decided, what was the strategy, how the decision was arrived, not because of it, but just because how the conversation unfolded in the meeting. Have you been there? Maybe the leader's tone was rushed. Maybe his body language was very clenched and stiff. Maybe he did not recognize you. Maybe the message was very clear in their head, in the leader's head, but it was very confusing to the entire room. And that lingering feeling is not really great after the meeting. And that lingering feeling that is carried after that meeting is what I call the emotional aftertaste. And teams rarely fail because of one big disaster. That's like that bucket that was cracked, right? It is not because of that bucket which was cracked, the entire water came out, the bucket became empty. No, Teams rarely fail because of a big explosion which could happen. They actually fail because of slow, invisible leaks which is happening in the team. And all of that coming from that everyday conversation, everyday communication by the leader. And not because he's not speaking good English or fancy words or or the strategy or his, but because of that lingering effect after his interaction. And that lingering effect is what we are going to address today, which I would like to call it the emotional aftertaste. And they lie in that frustrated tone that you may not even know that you're leaking, a missed acknowledgement of good work in your meeting, or you may carelessly do something or ignore somebody in your meeting. Those are those micro leaks, the tiny drops of trust, clarity, and energy that quietly drain, but drain completely of the team's performance. So here's the thing, leaders don't notice such leaks because they're very busy chasing results, very busy doing strategies, improving their skills. They try and do big things. But what the team feels, are we worried about how the team feels after every meeting? They walk out of meetings unclear, unmotivated, or even disconnected. And when that happens repeatedly, one time after the other, the teams get stuck in a plateau called as performance plateau. They stall, they wait for instructions instead of taking initiatives. So now, let me ask you this. In your last meeting, what was that emotional aftertaste that you leave behind, that you left behind? Did your team walk out energized, clear, wanting to lead the project? Or were they hesitant, they were second guessing, they were feared to even speak? I'm asking you this question because the answer to this question is a difference between teams that constantly need managing and the teams that are empowered, that can lead themselves, the autonomous teams. And today, I want to show you all how to plug those invisible leaks through something as simple, as powerful as everyday communication through emotional aftertaste for the leaders. And when you do that, you will definitely unblock or unlock what I call the performance flow, where your team doesn't just perform, they take ownership, they take proactive measures, they act with trust, and they move on together as one single unit. Because team is not essentially people coming in from different areas and different individuals, but teams are ones which can actually operate as single cohesive unit. So our job as a leader is to shape this team which can actually work together as a cohesive team. All right. Now that we've opened up this idea of leaks, let me put some shape to it, because here's the truth, leaks don't show up as like this big red flags which like blows the whistle and catches our attention. No, they show up as everyday frustrations, and then they keep slowly adding up one after the other, very slowly and invisibly. You don't even know that they're adding up. A performance leak is when you give an instruction that you think is very clear, but there are other people in your team interrupt in three different ways. And that's what is the magic of communication, right? You think you've communicated it well, but people perceive it in a way that they want to perceive. Is that communication? Now, next question, is that leadership communication? Absolutely not. Effective communication is when you put across a message with a certain intention. If it is received as the same message with the same intention, only then it is an effective communication. And in this case, you're sending out a message, and three people, interpreting it in three different ways. A leak is when someone doesn't speak up in a meeting because they have learned their ideas are not valued. Maybe somebody told me an idea. Kavina, I have a brilliant idea. And then I said, hey, yeah, park it, let's come later. And then I move on to the next person to talk. What would have happened to that person whose idea I silently ignored? Do you think this person will ever speak up? No. What about others? They're also watching that Kavina, as a leader, has ignored this person. So they are as well not going to voice out their ideas from now on. And you see the emotional aftertaste that you're leaving, and this is going to get rippled across, and the culture gets formed. You see, right, how a small action, unintentional action of yours could actually build into a bigger culture. A leak is when an email sits in an inbox for days because no one feels urgency to respond. And you see, as a leader, what you're doing, you're double checking, you're sending multiple emails, reminder emails, asking them to reply, asking people to speak up. Individually, if you see, these leaks are all harmless, right? Very small. Sitting in somebody's inbox happens all the time. We think that it's very harmless. You might even shrug off saying, oh, it's just one delay. It's just one person who got disengaged today. But the truth is, multiply that over weeks and months, and the cost is really huge. Productivity starts slowing, energy of the team starts dropping, trust thins out to air, and leaders start to feel like they are dragging their teams uphill every single day. You imagine the amount of energy, time that is spent by the leader to drag the teams uphill every single day. And that's the cost that I'm talking today. And here's the catch. Unfortunately, leaders rarely see these leaks themselves. They only see the outcomes, bigger outcomes, missed deadlines, low engagement score, constant follow ups. But those outcomes are only when the disease has become really huge, right? They're only the symptoms. The leaks are happening much earlier. And if you can, as a leader, catch it, you'll be able to lead your team much better. And think about your own team right now. Where do leaks show up? Do people nod in agreement in your meetings, but then deliver something very different? Misalignment, performance leak, right? Do you find yourself repeating instructions again and again to your team? No alignment, lot of time you spend with your team to explain them. Do you often feel like you're pushing your team too much rather than they pulling themselves, or they are pulling the work? These whatever I told right now may not look like bigger crisis points, but they are these silent leaks. And the danger of these silent leaks is that they are silent, they are invisible, they are very easy to ignore, but suddenly the bucket is empty. And here's the insight. Most leaks don't come from the lack of skill or lack of strategy. They come from everyday conversation, everyday communication of the leader. From the words we use, the tone we set, the recognition we give. And that's why fixing performance leaks isn't about adding a process or introducing a new step. It is about paying attention to what lingers after we speak. That's what I call the emotional aftertaste. the feeling, the emotion that lingers after the leadership communication, that's exactly where we have to pay attention. Because every leak plugged is the energy that is returned to you. You imagine you are pulling your team uphill, the energy, the cost, the time, and when you plug enough of them, what happens? Enough of the invisible leaks, the flow starts to begin. Here's the part that most leaders miss, the blind spots. So let's talk about the blind spots in the leadership. So when the performance dips, what do leaders usually do? Double down on strategy, introduce a new process, introduce a new dashboard, trackers, metrics, KPIs, systems. That's what we all do, right? When we don't, when we see there is a performance dip. And even after the tools are in place, do you think the performance increases? Even if you have ever tried this, the truth is the leaks just don't go away. You're only consistently measuring with your dashboards and trackers and metrics and all that. People still hesitate, and the energy still feels low, the ownership still slips, you're still carrying your team uphill. Why? Because the real leak is not in your strategy. It is in that emotional aftertaste that you are leaving as leaders in your everyday communication. Let me explain. Emotional aftertaste is the energy. When I say energy here, it is a felt experience, right? So, emotional aftertaste is the energy your people carry after every interaction with you. When you finish a meeting, your words end. But what happens to the energy? The energy continues to linger in the minds of your people. And that particular energy decides whether your team walks out thinking, yes, I got this. Or your team goes, I am never coming back to this person. I hate conversations with this leader. That's the emotional aftertaste that I'm talking about. So, emotional aftertaste is the energy your people carry even after every interaction with you. How do you make your people feel? And believe me, every interaction, every communication creates definitely an aftertaste, you like it or not. The question right now is that we all have to answer ourselves is, am I going to leave a good emotional aftertaste or not so good emotional aftertaste? Because that is what is going to create culture. That is what is going to bring people together. And that is what will make people perform in your team. It is the tone of your email. It is the tone that you take in the meeting. It's your body language. It's your intention. It's whether you acknowledge somebody in the team meetings. All of these small signals show up in the performance leaks. And here's why I call this the it is a blind spot. Leaders don't get to feel their own aftertaste. I so wish that could happen, right? If only we knew to feel our own aftertaste, we wouldn't even be sitting here talking about it. You can't walk out of the meeting and say, let me taste my own energy, what I left behind. It is all what only our teams can feel. And they carry it very deeply in their nervous system. They carry it in their next task. They carry it in their next interaction. They carry it in their everyday work and in the next decision that they are making. And that's why people silently quit. It all starts with that tiny change of tone of the leader. Ripples, ripples, and ripples. And one day you're going to lose one of your top performing team member. Think about it. So now let's look at if a leader says, I know this deadline is tough, but I trust this team that we can do it. Let's figure this out. This can be told in a very ugly way. No, we cannot afford to do another mistake. How did we even arrive here? I want answers. Same situation, but you see how the leaders could actually handle it differently and how people would feel when they leave the room. And that's how simple it is. When leaders obsess over what they say, they will be able to understand, they will not be able to experience it, but they'll at least start to understand the after effects of their communication. And that's the awareness that I'm trying to bring in today. That's why plugging in leaks starts with noticing and shaping your emotional aftertaste in every single communication that you do with your teams. That's where we are going to start. Because when you shift the aftertaste, you shift the culture. And when you shift the culture, you're going to stop managing the leaks and then the flow starts automatically happening. So that's what we're all going to start looking at. So now the big question, how do we actually plug these leaks? Now let's break this down into three categories, okay? How do we actually plug these leaks? Because there has to be a way how we work with the leaks, right? The first category that I want to talk about is the clarity leak. What is a clarity leak? What happens when your goals are vague, your instructions are fuzzy, your priorities keep shifting? There's no clarity at all. Imagine telling your team, we need this soon. Soon could be tomorrow, soon could be next month, soon could be anything. It's very subjective to people, right? And that clarity creates wasted time, frustration in people. How many of us have gone through this? I don't understand. What do you try to tell? This is what is a question that we get asked a lot of times by our own team members. So the first thing that I want all of us to do is to put an end to our clarity leaks, right? To plug clarity leaks, I want you all to communicate with precision as much as possible. Replace soon with Friday 5 p.m. Replace urgency by when do you need it. Go as precise as possible. Even when you write EOD, write when. Because EOD to me is 5 p.m. EOD to my teams might be 11 p.m. And 11 p.m. is next day because I am logging out at 5 p.m. Isn't it? Isn't that how we need to tell, we need to be as clear as possible to our team members? So, clarity is the number one of all the leaks that you as a leader has to plug right today. And how do you plug it? Be as precise as possible. And here's the success measure. Clarity is kindness, and clarity is the energy. So start with clarity in your communication and start imagining how your team members are going to perceive what you're telling. Is it clear enough to them? And the second category in how do we plug these leaks is the trust leak. Very important leak. And this trust is what I told, right? Teams are not different individuals, teams are a cohesive unit. And to form a cohesive unit from the individual people is nothing but the glue is the trust. So the second important one is the trust. These show up when people feel doubted, dismissed, unrecognized. They're all scattered and there's no glue binding them together. Let's say someone had like a question. on how to work on a presentation. The only reply or the feedback they hear is, you missed a point number three, you missed point number two, all that criticism that goes on. What happens to that person who came to ask a question? They walk away feeling unseen, they most importantly dismissed, right? And that aftertaste chips away the trust that they can have. And to plug trust, leaders need to recognize effort, not just outcomes. And we are all living in AI area arena, right? What really happens right now is that AI is the present, is the future right now, and people are all working with a lot of innovation. They may fail, they may win, but as leaders leading in today's generation, today's era, doing a lot of innovation, there's only one way to go about it. You need to start recognizing efforts and not just the outcomes. Because in innovation, you don't know how the outcomes are coming out. So start recognizing the effort. Say, I see the work you put in. I see you. And this particular trust through the recognition can actually start filling the trust tank and inspire ownership for people. And then it can bring all of them together. Because once the ownership comes in, right, they start becoming more proactive. So the second category is trust leaks. And how do you plug this? Start recognizing not just outcomes, but also the efforts. Now, the third category for us is energy leaks. These are very subtle because when we say energy, it's abstract, right? They are very subtle, but very powerful. It is your tone, your body language, even your silence. They say silence speaks louder than words. And if it's a leader, it speaks double louder. Have you ever asked a question in a meeting and been met with blank stares from your team? It's not just that people don't know the answer, they are all keeping quiet because the leader's energy is signaling judgment, not curiosity. So they naturally shut down. Even if they know the answer, they don't want to get judged. I feel I'm better not talking rather than talking something and being judged. Right? So ask questions with genuine curiosity. Please have that judgmental mind off. When you act with curiosity, people will show up fully in conversations. And that's what we all need, don't we? We don't want muted teams. We want loud teams who are fully engaged in the conversation. Brainstorming happens, innovation happens, creativity happens when people show up in their most authentic self. Even a 2-second pause to breathe before you speak can actually shift the aftertaste that you leave behind. So let's start managing our energy much better. How we show up as a leader, how is our body language, what kind of words that we choose to speak, what is the energy that I'm holding in my body, my words. So start showing up in your curious self so that people bring their fullest self to work. And that's what we all need from our team. And if they are not talking, it is not definitely the problem of the team, it is a problem of the leader. Now, here's what is very important: plugging leaks isn't about being perfect, it is about being conscious because not all human beings are perfect, and leaders are all human beings, right? So plugging leaks is not just being like perfect all the time, but it is about being conscious all the time. Leaders who are conscious of clarity, who are conscious of trust, who are conscious of the energy that they create in their team. If they're conscious of each one of this, the fewer the leaks, the better is the performance flow of your team. So I want you to reflect for a moment. Think of an interaction you had this week. Maybe a meeting, maybe an email, a quick conversation. What did you leak? Did you leak clarity, trust, or energy? And what's that one small shift you could take to plug those invisible performance leaks that is happening the next time? Because leadership is absolutely not those grandest moments, the biggest wins that is happening in the project or with the team. It's built in every day, every communication that you make, and constantly plugging leaks in everyday moments is actually what transforms teams from being dependent to self leading, teams from being dragged to teams being empowered. Now imagine you don't have to carry your team uphill, but they walk along. Can you imagine the shift that you could actually be doing? The flow, performance flow that you can actually be unlocking. Now, from talking about those invisible leaks in the bucket, we are talking about flow that you can actually unleash, the teams that you can empower. When leaders start plugging leaks, something powerful happens. The performance flow begins. And what do I mean by a flow? Flow is that state where teams start to align, team starts to come together as a cohesive unit by that glue called trust, self ownership, proactiveness. You don't have to chase them, you don't have to remind them, you don't have to drag them. They anticipate problems much in earlier, they escalate, they even better, they will de-escalate themselves, they will do the risk mitigation themselves, they step in for each other, and the energy feels lighter in the team. You know how good that would feel. The energy of the team is lighter, and work doesn't feel like a punishment anymore. I always remember this picture from LinkedIn, a team which is pushing a boulder uphill. If you can make that flow happen, you will start seeing that it is downhill and it's as smooth as a waterfall. So here's the key. Flow isn't created in strategy. Flow isn't created in those annual town halls and numbers and vision, mission, and all of that. Flow is very simply created in everyday communication of the leader. It is shaped in the way the meetings are closed. It is shaped the way in how you give the feedback, how you give recognition, even that small tone that you take in the daily check-ins that you're doing, everyday communication. I'll give you a very simple example. A meeting ends, a leader says, "Any questions?" That's what we all do, right? Any questions? What happens? Silence? People walk away half sure of what's next. That, that is a leak. Now imagine instead, we have to do the contrast, right? So now imagine on the contrast, there's another leader who ends with, "All right, let's go around quickly. What's your next action from this meeting?" And suddenly, everyone leaves clear, accountable. And that tiny shift in that communication from "Any questions?" to "What's that action point that you're leaving with?" One sentence is all the difference. And the tiny shift plugs the leaks and creates flow. Or let's take example of the feedback. Feedback is another thing, no, that we all dread giving, receiving. It's very simple. A leader says, "Why is this late?" That question creates defensiveness. Why is this late? Oh, I have to defend myself now. I've got a judgmental question. I can't leave this unarmed. It signals blame. Why is this late? This particular question signals blame, signals judgment. And what happens? The flow stalls there. But let's just look at the contrary. Let's just change the wording a little slightly. Huh? What's blocking you? Now, the aftertaste that the second leader is giving is support. What is the first leader giving? Blame, judgment, fear. Immediately, I will panic. My amygdala comes in. I am emotional now. I'm not thinking logical because I'm threatened. So, people feel safe to share challenges when you create an aftertaste which is support. And then the solutions emerge, your flow starts flowing, your performance is very good. Different aftertastes, different outcomes. Let's take example of recognition. Hey, good job. It's a nice recognition. But what is it? It's pretty vague, isn't it? It doesn't build ownership. It just is very nice. Oh, thank you very much. You move on. It doesn't build anything. Instead, say the way you simplified the client issue that we recently had has actually saved us hours. And what is that? That's precise, that's meaningful, and it tells the person exactly what they'll have to keep doing. They say, no, you'll have to appreciate what you want to be replicated or multiplied. Be precise in the recognition. And recognition like that, being very precise, creates the flow because it reinforces the behaviors that move the team forward, not just for that person. The others also understand, okay, so this is what is getting recognized. Let me also do it. So, what are we essentially doing? We are unblocking or flowing, getting the flow happen. And the beauty of the flow is once it starts, it multiplies. One person taking initiative inspires another person. One act with clarity gives another person clarity. One recognition on a specific task make people multiply that same reinforcement of positive behavior. And soon the leader isn't carrying the team upward, the team is carrying itself. And this is the shift from managing every leak to creating a system where leaks get plugged naturally because the culture itself will support the flow which can happen. And any new team which gets added will add to the flow because you've created the culture. You've unlocked the flow. And as I mentioned, the beauty of flow is that it multiplies. And that's when teams stop waiting for your feedback, stop waiting for your instructions, and they start leading themselves. So, if leaks are about everyday communication, the flow is also about everyday communication. It's not about grand speeches, it's not about leadership slogans, it's not about those words written on the walls of your company. It is about small words, small tones, small gestures which you choose to do every day. And these everyday signals either keep you stuck in those invisible leaks or get you into that action flow. Now, I want to tie all of what we spoke together, how to move from leaks to the flow, from firefighting to having empowered self leading teams. And the transformation actually comes down to three steps. Number one, start noticing the leaks. Start paying attention to the moments where clarity, your trust, your energy has slipped away. and start looking at how your team is reacting. Are they hesitating? Are they in confusion? Do they want double reminders, double checks? Are they speaking up? These are signals of leak. So I want you to start noticing the leaks. The second one is to start shaping your emotional aftertaste in your communication. Before you walk into any meeting, before you want to give any message, ask yourself, what aftertaste do I want to leave with my people before this meeting ends? I want them to be trusted. I want them to be supported. I want them to be clear. I want them to be motivated. So these are the emotional aftertaste that we will have to leave. The step number three is use everyday communication as your lever. It's the best lever that you could ever have. And the very simplest one, also, right? This isn't about redesigning your strategy, your skill and all of that. It is about small intentional shifts in your communication, in every interaction that you have with your team. Ending meetings with clear ownership that we saw right now. Framing feedback as precise as possible and as supportive as possible. Recognizing effort with precision. These are micro moments that you're starting to build your flow. And what's the reward? Your reward is unlocking the flow. Your reward is empowering your team. Your reward is your team coming together cohesively. And that's when you build what I call the self-leading teams. And that's the path for all of us. Notice the leak, shape the emotional after taste, and communicate with intention every single day. And remember this, communication is never neutral. Communication is never neutral. Every word, every tone, every silence that you use leaves absolutely behind an emotional aftertaste. It's only going to fall under two categories, whether it is positive or negative. Positive, you're plugging the leak. Negative, you're creating more leaks. So the next time you step into a meeting, don't ask yourselves, did I cover the agenda? Ask yourself, what aftertaste did I leave behind? Did I create confusion, which is more leaks, or did I give clarity and supportive emotional aftertaste, which is going to unlock the flow for you? Because leaders who lead what lingers, leaders who lead with what lingers don't just manage tasks, they multiply trust, they unlock ownership, they unlock the flow, and they create and build teams that they don't have to drag the uphill, but they build teams that can carry themselves forward. So, my simple call to all of you is plug the leaks, unlock the flow, and you watch for yourself that your teams will be empowered, will be thriving, and somebody who can lead themselves. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Kavina. You covered it in so much of detail, and which is really nice because we all make such kind of mistakes. Yeah. And
Thank you,
like
Shabana.
to add, Premji, Rajvin. Yeah, Rajvin. Actually.
Hi, Rajvan.
A very good presentation. I think every organization needs a good leader and someone who can understand. Because a good communication starts with encouragement, honesty, honesty, uh, honesty and dedication. and being a trainer, this is my experience being a trainer for writing ebooks, being a trainer and being podcast and being a trainer for Mavin. This I'm sharing it from my experience. So very good, very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajvan.
I think I would like to add that every organization needs laughter also, because you know uh, because what is an organization without teamwork and laughter? Even among help, even among domestic helpers, one should understand the other when the other is busy and should help out. Yeah, it comes from the sincerity of the heart. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Great, then.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Yes, please.
Namaste. I
Namaste.
saw Nimish Shah is silent, so I wanted to ask a question here. Um, I'm in that transition now. Uh, I wouldn't know whether to call it leadership. I always regard it as a servantship, because somewhere someone told me long time ago that the greatest among you shall be the servant to all. So I come with this serving attitude that I must serve, so that if I serve to the best of my ability, and then clarity comes in. If I have an ego issue, or you listen to me, I'm telling you something here, then it becomes some kind of warped management. It doesn't hold leadership values anymore. And the other thing which I observed among other leaders in my organization is that when the question is posed, I find it's helpful if we ask the question in the context, like we repeat the question and say, is this what you meant? The listener says, wow, okay, he listened to my question and clarified it. In fact, they get the answer automatically. Just a little bit I say to them is a lot to them. Less is more. If they're not clear, if I'm not clear about what they're asking, I have to say a lot of things to make the matter clearer for them, and they get very confused. And the third point is that humility plays a very important part, I feel, as a leader. If we are there to learn from each other, we'll go very far. That's my observation.
Very
Thank you.
true. Thank you very much for sharing. It's very humbling to know that you follow servant leadership as well, and that's something that I also learned through my life, that it's better to have us serve people as a servant leader, a leader who truly serves their people. And when I made that shift to servant leadership, I saw that my teens started respecting me for the leader that I am and not for the titles that I own. So that was a very humble shift I made, and I carry it till today with all my heart. Because as leaders, we are all human beings, and I keep telling in all of my speeches that leadership is not about being perfect, it's just about being conscious. I make a lot of mistakes, but am I humble enough to ask sorry to my team that I made a mistake? And I do not have all the questions. When my team asks, am I humble enough to tell them that, hey, I don't know this answer, but you know what? I will check and come back. It's it's very simple as that. And thank you very much for adding that flavor of humility to leadership. That goes a long way. Thank you. Shabana, yes. I think that's all
I,
the questions. Or
Nimish also want to share? Maybe? I don't know. Hello, Nimish?
Yeah,
Yeah. You want to share? You are
yeah, she had given a really good ideas, and of course, I was working in the same manner, the way she told, because the small things makes a difference in the life and in the career also. So you are absolutely right, going a great way. It's a really good time to see you and hear you. Also got something new which can give me and go ahead in my life also. Thank you. It was a really good.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Kavina. So we can wrap it up for today. And thank you, everyone, and see you again tomorrow.